mini lesson series. In these series, we discuss various topics of violin playing, and we will categorize them into beginner, intermediate, and advanced topics. These topics will range from classical topics to country bluegrass, Irish Celtic, as well as pop, rock, and the use of effects pedals and other types of pedals with the electric violin. In this mini lesson, we're going to discuss the various types of playing on two strings at the same time. Some people call this double stops. However, double stops is merely one form of playing on two strings at the same time. There are many different finger patterns of double stops, so when we get to the section on double stops, we will categorize these into patterns that can be easily recalled when playing along with a band, for example, so that you can convert that song from one string to two strings on the fly. But before we discuss the different types of double stops, we need to discuss sounding good when playing on two strings. In order to sound good when playing on two strings, some people may think that you need to put extra pressure on your bow so that it flattens the hair against both strings. The only problem with that is the extra pressure ends up sounding like this. And it causes the violin to make an evil hiss, which is only acceptable in The Devil Went Down to Georgia in the devil part. So how do you sound good on two strings at the same time? The problem is, if you're watching this video and you recall when you first learned violin, it was probably pretty hard to not hit two strings and to only play on one string. But with a lot of practice, you were able to play on one string without hitting two strings. Now we need an exercise that will help you to be able to go from one string to two strings and back to one string on the fly. So in order to do this, I've developed this exercise for you. So you may want to grab your violin if it's handy, because there will be a play along section for this. So what you want to do is we'll play just the E string first, using long bows for all of these. Then we'll play the A string, then we'll play the E and the A together. Then we'll continue across the violin by playing the A string by itself, followed by the D string, and then the A and the D together. And then the D string by itself, followed by the G string, and then the D and G together. Then we're going to go back the other direction with it. That way we cover all bases of being able to switch between one and two strings on the fly. So if you have your violin, go ahead and grab it now so that you can play along. So we're going to start with the E string using long full bows. What we just did there was a type of playing on two strings at the same time called open fifths. We can also do fifths by using any finger barred across two strings at the same time. When we do this, this is the only time that it's acceptable to have your finger flattened, because typically your finger needs to be rounded on the string so that it's only on one string at a time. In this case, you will flatten your finger across two strings. You want to make sure that your finger is not tilted in any way, because in that case, one or more of the notes is likely to be out of tune. So this can be done with the first finger, the second finger, the third finger, or the fourth finger flattened across the two strings you're playing on. So let's demonstrate that on the G and the D string using first finger. So we played a fifth using our first finger in that example. Next, let's move on to the next type of playing on two strings at the same time, and that's called droning. Droning is when you play one note consistently along with the melody that's played on the string next to it. There's 4 types of droning that I would like to talk about, and I've categorized these. The first type I'm going to talk about is droning with an open string, with no fingers on that string. There's what's called droning down, as well as what's called droning up. Of the 2 types, droning down is the easiest, because when you place your fingers on the higher string, in this case the A string, you can see if your fingers are touching the D string by accident or not. If they are, simply move them over. If they're touching the D string, that D string won't ring out even. This can be done on any 2 sets of strings, however. So if you're playing on the A and the D, you want to make sure your D string is not touched by the fingers on the A. If you're playing on the D and the G, you want to make sure that your fingers are not touching the G string and just on the D string. So that's droning down. That's the easiest form of droning. There's also droning up. In this situation, you may be playing, say, on the D and the A string, and your fingers will be on the D string playing the melody. You don't want them to touch the A string. It's real important to have rounded fingers and not have them touching. If you do notice they're touching that string that's supposed to be open, you simply want to rotate your elbow underneath the violin so that it takes your fingers off of that A string. That looks like this. Now my fingers are on the D string, but I feel them touching the A string. You can't really see them very well, but you can feel it. And if you were to play this, it would sound pretty horrible. So, because I can feel my strings touching, I'm going to rotate my elbow underneath the violin, which takes my fingers off of that A string. So there's an exercise that we're going to do to practice droning up and droning down with open strings. In order to do that, let's take the D and the A string and we'll play them together in such a way that we hear both strings evenly. We'll do a D scale, starting with no fingers on either string and going all the way up to A3, third finger on A string, and then back down to no fingers on either string. If you want to grab your violin and play along, here we go. If you were able to hear both strings evenly and your fingers weren't accidentally touching the open string, then good job. Let's talk about the next type of playing on 2 strings. On this type, you may have one finger down, barred across 2 strings, like that first example that we talked about, which is a fifth. Except during this, we will play notes on either of the other strings with our other fingers, making sure they don't touch the other string so that you only hear that first finger on the other string. So that's a lot harder and it's not very common. Another type of droning still would be if you play fourth finger on the lower string so that it matches the note of the higher string. And while you're playing that, you play the melody of the song along with it on the higher string. In order to do this effectively, you might first want to make sure you match the note of the higher string with your fourth finger on the lower string. For example, taking the D and the A string, we want to make sure that that fourth finger on the D string matches the A string note. You can move it around like that until it does match. A common song that uses this type of droning is a folk song called Sally Gooden. There may be other songs that use this type of droning as well. Now let's talk about the final type of playing on two strings at the same time, and that is double stops. A double stop is called that because you are stopping the vibration of both strings by having a finger down. So there's a finger down on one string, which will be the melody of the song, and a finger down on the other string next to it, which will be a harmony note played along with that melody. Like I said, I've categorized these into different types of double stops so that they can be easily recalled when playing along with the band on the fly. The first type is where the melody of the song will be on the higher string. Whatever finger you're playing in that melody on the higher string, simply use one finger less on the lower string next to it. So for example, if you're using a second finger on A string for the melody, you would use a first finger on D string for the harmony note. This can be accomplished either using a natural second finger or a sharp second finger. Either one of them works. In order to get this in tune, if you want to grab your violin, we'll start with the lower string or the harmony note. So let's play first finger on D, make sure it's in tune. Then while keeping your first finger down, we're going to play second finger on A. In this case, we'll use a C sharp or a higher second finger. Now let's put the two together, making sure that our bow is evenly placed on both strings. Another one of these would be if you were playing a third finger for the melody. And then you would have your second finger as a harmony note on the lower string. And then of course you could also have your fourth finger in the melody, and then your third finger would be next to it on the lower string. That's one category. Another category would be if you're playing the melody of the song on a lower string. For this type of double stop, you would use two fingers less on the higher string to go along with that melody note. For example, if you're playing on the D and the A string and your melody being on the D string has a third finger, then two fingers less on the higher string would be first finger, or A1. Let's practice that one. So we'll start with third finger on D. Once we're sure that's in tune, we'll leave that in place and we'll put two fingers less on the higher string or on A string, which is first finger on A string. Let's play that. Now let's combine the two. And just like you did that, you could also do it with fourth finger and second finger. So fourth finger would be on the lower string as part of the melody, and second finger would be the harmony note on the string that's higher. Now there's another type of double stop that is more of an accent note. these kind of work opposite of the ones that I just described. With these, the melody of the song will be played on the higher of the two strings. And whatever the note is that you're playing, you'll use one finger higher on the lower string. This creates a note with tension that often resolves into the note following. So for example, we could have our third finger on the A string, which would be accompanied by our fourth finger on the D string, the melody note being on the higher string. So let's start with our third finger on A, which would be accompanied by our fourth finger on D. And if you play the two together, so that could be done with a 4-3 pattern, or a 3-2 pattern, or a 2-1 pattern. So what I've done is I've created a table with all the different finger patterns for playing on two strings in a nice organized manner in the description below. If you've liked this video, remember to subscribe so you can receive further educational videos on playing violin. And be sure to hit the like button so that other people can find this video as well. And stay tuned for our next unusual violin video, where we discuss everything violin, especially the unusual.